Well, this is shocking. I mean, truly shocking.
Bry's Comics.
Before we hop into this unboxing, make sure to go follow me over on Whatnot. Link down in the description for $15 towards your first purchase. We're having a ton of fun over there. I'm doing $1 starts on slabs every Friday at the moment, and people are getting some good deals, and it's a great time. So I hope to connect with you over on Whatnot. If you're new to the channel, we always do a monthly giveaway. If you subscribe, comment, and like this video, you're entered to win 2 slabs this month. We're getting ready to draw the winner for that, and we're also getting ready to draw the winner for the newsletter giveaway over at brycecomics.com. If you sign up for the newsletter over there, you're entered to win 2 free slabs this month, and it's also where you'll get first access to new collections that come in, like the books in this video, discount codes, all kinds of cool stuff happening at brycecomics.com. And lastly, follow me on Instagram for trades for grails when they come in, and a bunch of other cool stuff happening over on Instagram. So this video is probably one of the more rare videos that you will see right now for CGC on YouTube and social media. I got about 3 submissions back, all within a couple days, stuff from different tiers: pre-screen, modern 9.8, economy stuff, express stuff, over 100 books in total, and all of them, I mean every single one, was fine. No problems whatsoever. No scratches on the cases, no scuffs on the cases, no swapped labels, no hair in the cases. I actually agree with all of the grading. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. CGC did their job right the first time. And this is probably the first time that this has happened in at least a year. And I'm not exaggerating, folks. I always try to be completely transparent and honest on this video. I just call it as it is. I'm not a CGC fanboy. I'm not a CBCS fanboy. I just call it as it is. If I get a good submission, I'm going to talk about it. If I get a bad submission, I'm definitely going to talk about it. But I do think it's important to talk about both, right? Because you certainly get a whole lot less clicks because of the way social media is set up. It's a real problem, guys, to click on whatever is negative and dividing and divisive. That's the stuff that leads. But it's also important to post videos when stuff goes right, because you don't want a completely misconstrued image of whoever it is, just for the sake of transparency and honesty. Now, to that note, CGC, for the most part, has been horrible with quality control and customer service and pretty much everything since they've had this huge expansion, right? I mean, I think we can agree across the board that they are struggling. I'm not like a CGC apologist. I'm just saying, hey, I got a whole bunch of submissions for the first time in over a year that were perfect. Nothing wrong with them. So CGC has undergone an incredible period of growth, bringing on a ton of new employees, and in that process, their quality control has really slipped through the cracks. And I think that a large portion, okay, and I know I have to be really careful with what I say here, but a large portion of the backlash, the bad PR, the bad publicity, everything negative going on with CGC, I think a large portion of that would be handled and taken care of if they just dialed in quality control. I mean, the reason that we get so upset, the reason that we're so passionate about this is we're already waiting for these prized collectibles for such a long period of time. They finally get delivered, and you open it up just to find out that they've been treated with anything less than like reverence, you know, like just they've been mistreated or poorly treated or rushed, and there's quality control issues, and you just have to send it back and have to wait another month to 4 months. I no exaggeration. I've waited 4 months once for them to fix, you know, a mechanical error is what they call it when there's something that they messed up on. So just to wait all this time, just to have to wait longer, and a lot of times you miss the window. This hobby is all about timing, and a lot of times if you're stuck waiting for a mechanical error to come back from CGC because of an error that they made on a book that's unsellable until they fix it, sometimes you miss the window for that book. Maybe the show comes out on Disney Plus and the hype dies out by the time you get it back. I've had that happen on several occasions. So there's good reason why we're passionate about this in the hobby. I'm hopeful that we're heading in the right direction. Multiple submissions, all fine. It used to be this way. This is the way that it used to be years ago when I first started submitting to CGC. It was like there was rarely, very far and few in between was there an issue. And then for a long period there was a ton of issues. So what I want to do in this video is take a look at the grading. All right, we got stuff from the economy tier and other stuff. I know it's really helpful to look at the grades, why they got the grades they did, and I also want to take a look at some pre-screen 9.8 books and go over what are some allowable defects in a 9.8. So let's jump into these books. So we're going to start with these Bronze and Silver Age books to look at the grading and see why they got the grades they did. And then we're going to look at some modern examples to see some allowable defects in a CGC 9.8. So first up we have Strange Tales number 170, origin and second appearance of Brother Voodoo, and the grader's notes say light spine stress lines to cover and light wear to cover. So it got a 9.2, and there is light spine stress lines to cover. There's only a few, but they are there. There's one, there's another one. So very light spine stress lines to cover. And then the light wear to cover usually is around the corners and edges of the book. So there you can see some light wear and some light wear continuing onto the edge of the book. And then on this corner, there's also some light wear. So typically light wear applies to the corners and edges, but I would assume that it could also mean just anywhere on the general surface of the book. So I definitely agree with this grade in the 9.2. Here we have Marvel Spotlight number 6, the second appearance of Ghost Rider and the origin of Ghost Rider retold, and the grader's notes say tape pull front cover, light staining to cover, light tears to cover, light wear to cover, and moderate spine stress lines to cover, and multiple tears to the spine. So a lot going on with this book, and one of the things to remember with a book is the first step that they do when they grade a book at CGC is they get the overall impression of the book. And if you take a look at this, I mean, the overall impression is that it's a mid-grade copy, right? And then we go in and take a closer look and start deducting for the major defects. So tape pull, that is right here on the front cover. So it doesn't affect the grade too much, but it did show up on the grader's notes. So for the light staining to cover, it's something that could be really difficult to see once the book is actually encapsulated. And I can't actually find it, but I don't doubt that it's there. It could be, you know, just the slightest little gunk on the cover. And so for the light wear to cover, it's stuff like that. You see how that edge right there just has light wear. And that's throughout the book. For the moderate spine stress lines and the moderate tears to spine, you can see there's definitely, you know, significant damage there. These light tears are interesting. It's not something that I've seen, you know, too often, where there's actually, like, you know, little pieces missing out of the spine. So it was interesting to see that that could still be allowed in a 6.0. But again, when you take a look at this book overall, you know, it's certainly, I have no problems with a 6.0. I think that's a very fair grade. Journey into Mystery 114, this came back a 4.5, and the grader's notes say light tears to cover, moderate creasing, and moderate spine stress lines to cover. And the moderate creasing is really the limiting factor for a book like this, and you see this is very common in a book in like in the 4.0 to the 5.0 range. It's like a reader's crease along the spine where this book has been enjoyed and read over the years, and that's kind of a limiting factor. I think with a reader's crease like this, it's going to stay somewhere in the 4.0 to 5.0 range, and good luck telling the difference between a 4.0 and 5.0. I mean, it really is splitting hairs at that point, and just the person's opinion between a 4 and a 5. And it kind of varies from book to book because, you know, it could be some other big limiting factor that made it a 4 instead of a 5. So very typical for the 4.0 to 5.0 range. No problems at all with a 4.5 on this one. So here's a 5.5, and as you can see, this is the first full appearance of him. And as you can see, there is no reader's crease on this one, so that, you know, that takes that limiting factor off of it, but it's still got a 5.5. It's got a bunch of stuff going on. The grader's notes say light creasing to cover, light soiling to cover, light spine stress lines to cover, light tears to cover, and moderate staining to cover. So light creasing to cover. This is a super tough book for that with the black cover. This is light creasing. And you can see down here, this is also part of the light creasing. Now, if this had like multiple lines going this way, which is really common from, where on books of this era, if it had multiples going like about that whole little triangle section there, I think that would up it from light creasing to moderate creasing, and then it would be more in the 4.5 range. So here is the light tears, and the light soiling is an interesting one. It's something that I'm having a hard time seeing through the case. I don't doubt that it's there. Maybe just up on this edge, just a little bit of soiling. So all of those things have no problems with a 5.5 on this book. So we have Thor 225, and this is the first appearance of Firelord, and the grader's notes say light creasing to cover, light tears to cover, light wear to cover, and moderate spine stress lines to cover. Again, when you look at this book, your first opinion, first impression, it's definitely, a higher grade book, more in the very fine range. So here we have the moderate spine stress lines to cover. So as you can see, they're more significant than just like a little tick, right? And that's the difference between light and moderate. So it goes very light, light, and moderate for the spine stress lines. So that's moderate spine stress lines. For the light wear, there again, you can just see along the edges and stuff, just a little bit of fraying and whatnot, just light wear. And here is probably the limiting factor to keep this out of like the 8590 range, is this light tear right here. So absolutely no problems with an 8.0 on this book. All right, so here we have Fantastic Four number 47, came back a 7.5, and the grader's notes say light bends to cover, light cover tanning, and light spine stress lines. So here's a book that I definitely, from the outer look of it, thought it would get more in the 8.0, 8.5 range based on the condition of the spine and the edges and the corners. It seemed like this could definitely be in the 8.0 or 8.5 on its best day range. Nice clean back cover. But the thing that's interesting about this is the light cover tanning. So as you can see, there's no cover tanning on the outside of this cover. It's nice and white. The back is nice and white. I mean, there's certainly no cover tanning on that. So the cover tanning is on the interior covers of this book, I believe. And that's just a very important point to consider, is sometimes it could have light cover tanning or moderate cover tanning to the book that you can't see on the outside cover, but it's on the inside cover, and it might not even be in the grader's notes. And so you could be looking at a book like this and thinking, man, this is a really good crack press candidate because it looks way better than a 7.5, and just keep that in mind, that the cover tanning can also be on the interior cover, and there's no way you can see that through the case. So something to keep in mind for books when they seem, very harshly graded. There's always that chance that it's something you can't see through the slab, and it's not in the grader's notes. Conan the Barbarian, number 24, the first full appearance of Red Sonja, and the grader's notes say light creasing to cover, light spine stress lines to cover, light staple tears, and light wear. So it's still got the 9.0. So here you can see the light staple tears. And this one actually goes out a little bit farther than the other one. And there you can see it on this one as well, that light staple tear. And so that's probably one of the more interesting things about this book is, light staple tears. At what point is it actually put in the grader's notes? This one, it's obvious because it's at, both ends of the staple on both staples. So that one's clear. But a lot of times, you'll see that there's a little bit of movement between the book and the staple, and maybe that line doesn't actually shoot out into the cover of the book. It's just there on the spine, and I've seen that plenty of times where it doesn't get downgraded for that. So it's interesting to see where that cutoff line is for that. But in addition to that, the light spine stress lines on the cover, the light wear. I have no problems at all with the 9.0 for this book. So here we have Conan 23, which the label says the first appearance of Red Sonja, and it's funny because label 24 says first full appearance of Red Sonja. So we've got first full appearance on 24 and first appearance on 23. So that's kind of interesting. And the grader's notes on this one say crunch, top of spine, fade, full, top, front, cover, light creasing, and light spine stress. So this book was actually in very similar condition, except it had this little crunch right here in the top corner. As you can see, that little line right there, at one point in its life it was dropped on that corner, and it made a little bend, created a color break and crease. And so the other big difference, it's hard to catch it here on camera, but there's like a little bit of a line where you could see almost like a yellow line. I'll put a picture on the screen zoomed in. And so what that is this book was in a stack of books at one point, and it was sticking out just that tiny little bit from the other books, and the sun was hitting that part of the book, and it caused the color to fade right there, and almost a perfect line across the top. And so it's a really interesting thing with color fading. You can do a little experiment. If you take a photograph, you've probably seen this before, with a very colorful photo, and you go and set it outside in the sun, certain colors start to disappear first, and the first color to go is red, and then another color, and then another color, and another color. It's really fascinating how it's one color at a time. The UV rays from the sun, they just make the colors from the photo or the comic book just disappear. So sometimes you might see a book that just has no reds on the cover, and you might think, oh man, this might be like a super rare printing error, like maybe it just ran out of red ink because there's just no red ink on this, and it makes it a really weird color wash, and it's actually just sun fading. So it's just a really fascinating thing to look out for. Definitely no problems with the 8.0 on this book. And here is Avengers 62, the first appearance of M'Baku, and the grader's notes say light cover tanning, light creasing, light spine stress lines, light staple tears, and light wear all corners. So this is one where you can kind of see the light cover tanning on the back of the book, but it's probably more prevalent on the interior covers of the book. And again, we have the light staple tears, and it seems like light staple tears makes it onto the notes when they radiate out from the staple. Okay, that's kind of what I'm noticing, at least from this submission, because you can see at both staples there's lines radiating out from the staples. So this book definitely has light wear on all corners, especially up here. This is probably the worst corner. So definitely no problems with a 7.0 for this book. All right, so now we want to look at some modern pre-screen 9.8 books that came back in the submission to show some consistent allowable defects in a 9.8. And this first defect is one that I always wondered about before I started doing this regularly, and that was the white line that appears along the spine of modern books. And you can see that this one has a white line that goes all the way up the length of the spine. It's kind of hard to catch on camera, but that is allowed in a 9.8. Essentially, when a book is manufactured, just folding it in half, sometimes depending on the paper quality, will create a white line along the spine to varying degrees. For different books, it varies on how significant it is. The cheaper the paper, the worse it is. So it can have a complete white line all the way up, depending on the paper stock, and still get a 9.8. Now, another issue that happens with these books, in addition to the white line being created sometimes from being folded, is when they're shipped and they're stacked on each other and they're inside a cardboard box that's right up against the spine, and the books just slightly rub on that cardboard box all the way down the highway until it arrives at the shop, and that can make the fraying on the side of the spine way worse to varying degrees, and that can affect the grade depending on how bad it is. But you know, if 98% of them that come out of the box have this rub on the corner, CGC is still going to give it a 9.8 because it's a negligible handling defect, and it's still a nearly perfect collectible. And so what I want to show on this one is this little bit of fraying right here on the spine that you can see, and that is allowed in a 9.8 to varying degrees. and it's kind of a judgment call thing. You know, I've seen it a little bit worse than that, but if it's going like, you know, a whole chunk, there's no way it's going to get the 9.8. But you know, so it's just getting used to the varying degrees that are allowed, and so far the white line in this fraying is allowed. Now, another thing that happens when the book is manufactured and folded like this is there's a certain amount of spine stress that happens from that. And if it's from manufacturing, a little bit of spine stress is allowed in a 9.8 to varying degrees depending on the paper stock. And this is that cheap Marvel paper, and as you can see here, you know, there's various little spine stress. Now you can tell that this is a different type of spine stress than a spine tick, okay? This isn't from the book being, you know, bent or folded. This is just straight up from manufacturing and the stress that is caused from folding the paper in half. And as you get more comfortable with it, you'll be able to tell the difference between a spine tick and, you know, very light spine stress lines that are from manufacturing that are allowed in a 9.8. But there's an example of it there. So it can have, like, you know, little stresses all the way up and down. Usually they don't break color and are still allowed in a 9.8. So what I wanted to show on this book, this is a thicker book, and I have two different variants here. I wanted to show on this one is the color rub. And so on the back, you can see right there is just a little bit of color rub that goes kind of the full length. It starts and stops and starts and stops. But this is definitely consistent in their grading with allowable in a 9.8 is that degree of color rub. Usually I'd say you're safe if it's the length of a staple at both staples. It's usually okay. Again, depending on severity, everything has nuance. So if it's like, you know, this very hard, deep color rub, this length of a staple, then that's definitely not allowed in 9.8. If it's light color rub like this, the length of a staple, all day, every day, it's still going to get a 9.8. And as you can see here, even if it's, you know, a little bit bigger, this is just very light color rub. It's allowed in a 9.8. Also, this being a thicker book, it means that there's bigger bindery tears that are allowed. So bindery tears at the top and the bottom are allowed in a 9.8, and they're allowed to a larger degree with these thicker books. So as you can see down there in that corner, it's a pretty thick bindery tear, and that's absolutely common in these books and allowed in a 9.8. I mean, 98% of these coming out of the box just have these fuzzy corners from it being just way too thick of a book with way too cheap of cover stock. So that's some allowable defects in a 9.8.
There you have it, folks. Don't forget to follow me over on Whatnot. Link in the description for $15 towards your first purchase. Subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and like this video for your chance to win 2 free slabs this month. And head over to brycecomics.com and sign up for the newsletter to get access to collections first when they come in, discount codes, and be entered to win free slabs every single month over there as well. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.